Okay.
And I'd like to call to order the October 7th, 2008 meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. May we have the roll call, please?
Agency members Draymond.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Chairman Najarian.
Here. May we have your report?
The agenda for the October 7, 2008 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, October 2, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
The next item is the minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
With no objections or corrections, the minutes will be submitted as they appear in the packet. The next item, please.
Item 5, oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the agency may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the executive director for investigation and report.
First card is from Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon. My name is Herbert Milano. Members of the agency and city staff, I keep thinking about what is the role of the redevelopment agency, especially with regard to those merchants who are already doing business along Brand, for example. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I came here telling you about the difficulties that was conveyed to me by some of the merchants and their impact of the Americana on them. Now, this morning, there was a mention of perhaps a business tax. And I was wondering, what is the benefit that a particular merchant might imagine out of a business tax and what services the city might provide. For 10 years, I had my office in Pasadena, and I paid a business tax. And one day, unbeknownst to me, I got a call and says, did you know that you are right on the border of an enterprise zone and that you could get 50% of some of your salaries covered by the government? And I said, well, I guess I could have a couple of entry positions. And I did hire, and for about a year, I had an individual who was partially paid, or I got a credit on the taxes based on the fact that there was an enterprise zone where my office was for a time. And so I wondered, what are the services that are being provided by the city that would say we'll justify a business tax? Because I didn't hear anything about providing a service. All I heard was, let me have some of your money. I've had a couple of visits to the gentleman who was before in charge of the economic development, promoting some ideas, and I really didn't get much traction with that. I also remember when we were having the major reconstruction along Brand, and how some of the merchant friends of mine who are on Brand were conveying to me that their business were down during that period of time 40 to 50%. I came here before you and I made a suggestion to encourage the staff, the city employees, to shop and dine on a regular basis until, we got over that significant downturn in the economy. It went nowhere. And so that's, I think, is part of the concept, part of the culture that I see here that exists. It is all right to go ahead and ask for and demand a tax or a fee, but the corresponding service and the initiative to be able to provide it is not there. It's not linked. When we had the discussions on the Americana, my contention was, were the figures that were being given, were done with proper accounting in mind, and they were not. Many of the assumptions that were given with regard to the financial justification would not pass muster with any individual or any graduate student in accounting, by any means. And that was my contention, the reason why I came before you so many times. So I've been asking for a renewed evaluation as to the projections of the income as it was stated back in 2004 with regard to what we were going to expect as our return on investment on the $77 million for the Americana. I could take those figures back and show you how many of those justifications were really pulled out of thin air. And I would imagine that, those things were not evaluated based on the potential downturn of the economy, just like the budget was done, all on the most best case scenario. And I think that's a significant disadvantage to any type of planning. When you come up with the most rosy expectations and make decisions based upon those, and then at the end, who pays? The merchants, the people who have to close, the employees who lose their jobs, and the people who lose their investments when they trust that you're going to do your due diligence in ensuring that they're going to prosper. not all of us have an opportunity to work for government. Only 20%. The other four out of five, they're the ones who have to bear the burden of carrying that other, that 80% has to carry the other 20%. So I think that government should really pay close attention to how your policies significantly impact. And we should get a yearly report on how these businesses and these merchants are actually able to maintain their businesses, especially now in a downturn economy. And I think that is the objective of redevelopment through your economic development, initiatives, to evaluate how it is that we're doing. So I've been a merchant before, and I know how tough it is, in the long hours that it takes to basically make a business run. And I think it behooves you to find out exactly what is the impact right now that you're having and that the economy is having on all of these businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Don Nakamoto and Ken Hitz.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the agency. My name is Don Nakamoto from the Verdugo Workforce Investment Board. Unfortunately, Ken, I think, was tied up at a meeting and couldn't make it. I just wanted to let you know about a workshop that we've been working together with Development Services on regarding exporting. The impetus for this workshop is the fact that there's been about a 23% increase in exports out of the LA and Long Beach ports in the first half of 2008. And the other thing that we were monitoring is the employment locally in the manufacturing sector. I think for the previous 5 years we've seen employment drop by about a quarter. In other words, we've lost about a quarter of the workforce in the Glendale Burbank area. But in 2006, we saw that stabilize. In 2007, we actually saw that grow. And some of the areas that we saw improvements are companies that focus on exporting goods. So we thought this was a really opportune time to begin working with local companies to help them get into the export field, and if they're already in the export field, to expand their markets to emerging markets or other countries around the world that may be interested in accessing their products. So we wanted to let you know this workshop has been set up for November the 12th, and you're all invited to come. Also, staff is invited as well. If you know any businesses that might be interested in getting into the export area, we've lined up some pretty good speakers. There's an agenda on the back of the flyer. And we're working very closely with the Port of LA and also Department of Commerce and other pretty heavy hitters in the export field. So we have a pretty nice agenda lined up for our local companies. Do you have any questions?
For all you exporters out there, this sounds like a great opportunity to learn the ins and outs. It is a pretty comprehensive list of speakers, from shipping to freight forwarding to perhaps financing with the SBA. There you go. So, thank you very much. Any questions? Mr. Quintero.
No questions, just a comment that Don is the Dean of local economic reporting here in this region, because he does it for Burbank, La Cañada, Glendale, and the surrounding communities. So no one knows the labor market better than Don Nakamoto.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
If I can make one just real quick point, a lot of people kind of look down on the manufacturing area, especially because of the job losses that we had over the last decade or so. But within Glendale, it's still the third largest employer, so we have to be conscious about the fact that that's an area that has specific needs as well.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Don. I don't have any other cards. Mr. McFall?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of council, a previous speaker in this and in a previous meeting has made a couple comments that I think are worthy of spending 30 seconds to just responding, lest the record continue to include some inaccuracies. The first thing, this morning, this body, serving as a city council, did have a study session that was requested merely to look at revenue options. Lest a rumor start, there was no direction by any means to go out and pursue a business license tax. At least we didn't hear that we received any direction. I'm more than confident that if this council had given that direction, which you did not, but you would have asked for a lot of information relative to benefits. That is typical of this body, and staff would expect to do absolutely nothing different to reflect that. Secondly, there was an indication that when we generate our revenue estimates, we use only best case scenarios. Just want to set the record straight on that. That is absolutely not the case. We are very conservative in the approach, recognizing that there's going to be upturns and downturns in the economy. So we use a conservative, moderate approach to this. We do not use the best case scenarios. Secondly, the study session this morning was merely options to reflect. There were no recommendations to implement any of those. And at the conclusion that this body asked us to provide information back on what is the city doing from a cost-cutting strategy. There wasn't just interest only in revenue generation, but also in what is the city doing to, in fact, curtail costs and expenses, which was a part of the budget adoption policy this year, was to include cost-cutting strategies, and in fact that the staff and personally the department heads of the city have been very engaged in from the moment that the city council adopted the policy. Have been working on a number of cost-cutting strategies. And then lastly, as far as reviewing information on individual businesses, and now we're doing, of course, this council knows that specific financial information is confidential and would not be discussed in this kind of a forum. However, general business information is processed by the Economic Development Business Assistant Department, along with consultants that we have, and businesses decisions are made based on information and seeing the trends that are going on in the community. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. McFall. I'm sure that any misstatements of fact that Mr. Milano attributed to actions by the council this morning were inadvertent and not intentional. So, thank you. Let's move on to the next item, please.
At item 6A, Director of Development Services, regarding proposed hotel development, Hyatt Place, Glendale, to be located at 225 West Wilson. At 6A1 is a motion authorizing the Executive Director to execute the first amended and restated exclusive negotiating agreement with Comar Investments, LLC, for the purpose of extending the negotiating period by 180 days from October 10, 2008.
Mr. Najarian?
Thank you. Mr. Weaver?
Glad to move 6A1 unless there's questions.
I'll second it.
Okay. Are there any questions from my colleagues on the
Extension of ENA, that's
Yes, this is in. Mr. Lanza-Feynman, 6 sentences or less, can you tell us what this action is that we're taking?
Sure. We entered into an exclusive negotiating agreement with Comar Investments for property at Central and Wilson for the development of a Hyatt Place. We are going at 6-month increments with them. They've done everything we've asked. We're asking you to extend that.
Very good, Mr.
Four that you can.
Very good. A for brevity.
I've got 2 more.
You can reserve them.
Okay, we have a motion.
Thank you.
I have no speakers. A motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Agency members Draymond.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Chairman Najarian.
Yes. Thank you. And what remains on our agenda? Any comments from staff?
Will we
Agency
adjourn?
members? Motion. We have a second to adjourn.
Second.
Redevelopment Agency is adjourned.